So what's really coming up with New Zealand?
Today, New Zealand has found 2 new cases of COVID-19, and that puts an end to a 24-day streak of seeing no new infections in the country. And if we all remember last week, the New Zealand government actually declared victory over the coronavirus. So the 2 new cases has brought a total to 1,506 cases in total, and the death toll remains at 22. The 2 new cases in New Zealand recently came back from the United Kingdom. Based on the local media, they were given special permission to attend a funeral in New Zealand as well.
So what will happen, because they lifted restriction last week, but today they have 2 more cases?
I think New Zealand has to be more careful now, but previously the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern also said that although they declared victory over the coronavirus, but that doesn't mean the battle is over yet. Although the restrictions are not there anymore, but what we are still seeing in New Zealand is that the border restrictions are still in place. So the citizens of New Zealand, as well as essential workers, are allowed to enter the country. So that means foreigners like us still cannot enter New Zealand. And all arrivals must go through a 14-day period of isolation or quarantine, and they also have to be tested for the virus twice.
I think these 2 new cases are quite interesting. They are 2 returnees from the UK, right? And they were allowed to leave the quarantine even before they were diagnosed or were even tested for coronavirus. And they travel over 600 kilometers to visit their, of course, the dying parent. It's quite unfortunate. And this is considered to be part of the so-called compassionate exemption for people in distress and need to really travel. So what has been the reaction from the authorities then, on this kind of exemption?
I haven't really seen the real reaction yet, but in fact, there's one interesting information that I found is that people under quarantine after arriving in New Zealand from overseas, which country you came from, are actually not allowed to attend a funeral. But if they've been through quarantine for at least a week or have been tested negative, then they can attend a small family gathering to grieve, but not really a funeral. But what we've been seeing is that some people have already granted special permission to attend a funeral because they've already went through quarantine, and as well as passing certain criteria, such as have medical details of the person they've visited during the quarantine, or what they've been, basically the travel history and what they've been doing. So that might be the reason why they granted this special permission. But a bit of a background information, the 2 new cases arrived in New Zealand from the UK on the 7th of June via Doha and Brisbane. And then when they arrived in Auckland, they entered self-quarantine at an isolation hotel. So during that time, they applied for exemption to visit their dying parent, like you said earlier, on 12th of June, and they granted permission to travel to Wellington on the next day because they actually applied for an exemption to visit their dying parent here.
So what would be measured by the government? They will announce lockdown or other restrictive measures?
For the government, they would be putting on alert at the moment for the citizens because of the 2 new cases that we've been hearing about. So probably it's more of a warning at the moment so that people remain vigilant on the situation. Well, even last week, if we all remember when they eased all the restrictions already, so that means the 4-tier level from the highest, they're now on the lowest. So that means social distancing is not applied anymore, but people still has to be on alert and be careful when they go outside.
Yeah. So it reminds us all in Thailand that we have to keep our guard up in order to cope with all the new infection.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Kun Nat.
Thank you.